Welcome to another episode of Untold Legends, where we explore the stories found within the worlds of video games, movies, comic books, and anything in between. In Chapter 7 of the Perfect Castlevania Timeline, Alucard uncovered a prophecy warning of his father's return in 1999, and set the pieces in motion for humanity to have its defenders. He bestowed the responsibility of wielding the vampire killer on the Belmont cousins, the Morris clan, and they fought for mankind alongside the Alucard clan through the First World War. Then John Morris's own son, Jonathan Morris, alongside his close friend Charlotte, unlocked the power of the vampire killer and destroyed the fusion of Dracula and death in the backdrop of World War II. After defeating Dracula, Jonathan visited his father's grave and paid his respects to make up for a lifetime of hating him unfairly. His father had tried protecting him from suffering the same fate that he had, but the vampire killer wouldn't take Jonathan's life. The boy's incredibly strong will and reliance on himself convinced the whip to accept him as its new master, and a bond was formed so strong it hadn't been seen since the time of Leon Belmont. Over the years, Jonathan and Charlotte continued fighting against the forces of darkness through the world, and his skill with the vampire killer grew immensely. He even learned how to summon the strength of the greatest of the Belmonts into a single powerful strike. Jonathan Morris had simply become unstoppable. But dark times were ahead for humanity, and the son of Dracula, Alucard, was working to decipher the prophecy of 1999. He understood that prophecies by their very nature were symbolic, and he doubted they originated from magic. If Nostradamus had indeed received information from the future, it would have been explained to him in ways that he would have understood for his time. A man named Aeon, one of the many leaders of an organization dedicated to preserving the flow of time, sent his trusted ally Saint Germain, the same time traveler that encountered Hector in the 1400s, to leave the warning in the past with Nostradamus. Interfering directly with history was forbidden, but Aeon witnessed a dark future for all mankind, and determined that a warning was necessary. They knew the prophecy would be stored in Ecclesia, and that Alucard would stumble upon it. Alucard was unaware of their involvement, but came to several conclusions. The vampire killer and the Belmonts would be needed, and an eclipse over Japan would be involved. When he battled Dracula alongside Trevor, a combination of Trevor's might with the whip and Sypha's magic was crucial in Dracula's defeat. In Japan, he began searching for allies that could tap into magical abilities, and he discovered the Hakuba clan, a bloodline that had been fighting the forces of darkness for centuries in Japan by sealing dark powers away. Allies that would surely be useful in the future. Through the decades, Alucard followed the trails of the Morris and Belmont clans, and as the 1990s approached, the time to reunite the Belmonts with the whip had come. Alucard was well aware of Jonathan's victory over Dracula and his connection with the vampire killer, but by the time the whip would be needed, Jonathan would be in his 70s. He traveled to Texas and met with Jonathan, now settled with a family of his own, and explained his understanding of future events. Jonathan had spent a lifetime with the vampire killer and earned its trust, and he agreed to travel with Alucard to return it to its rightful owners. Jonathan left his family behind, and together they found the direct descendants of Leon Belmont, a family with 2 children capable of using the vampire killer. The Belmonts understood how important their role in humanity's future was, and they agreed to have Jonathan train the older of the 2 children, a young boy named Julius. Jonathan ordered the whip to accept the Belmont bloodline as its master once again, and handed it to Julius. Immediately, the boy felt his family's connection to it, and his skill with the vampire killer came almost naturally. Under Jonathan's tutelage, Julius became every bit as powerful as Jonathan was at his prime. After he taught him everything he knew, Jonathan returned to his family, and Alucard waited for the moment that Julius would be needed. And even though Julius was given the responsibility of wielding the vampire killer, his younger sister Kokoro admired her older brother and decided to defend humanity in her own way. Kokoro Belmont eventually left home and joined a military unit known as G, outfitted with advanced technology that defended humanity against interdimensional threats. She joined G's Angel Squadron and used her skills to battle against an evil force they called the Bacterians, a threat from another planet very different from Dracula. Kokoro spent years away from home as part of Angel Squadron, and Julius continued preparing for his own destiny. The year 1999 had arrived, and Alucard hoped somewhere deep inside that the prophecy was incorrect. But near the end of the year, strange cosmic occurrences began happening, and Alucard knew it was no coincidence. The resulting destruction was much worse than he could have ever imagined. A red eclipse appeared over Japan, a rare supernatural event that bathed the entire planet in a crimson glow. Mysterious diseases appeared, storms ravaged the world, natural disasters destroyed cities, and the ensuing chaos resurrected Castlevania. as predicted. The red eclipse was a result of the Chaos Realm temporarily blending with the physical realm, creating a wormhole that supplied an unlimited amount of dark energy into Dracula. Demons appeared everywhere on Earth in a widespread panic, and Dracula directed them to destroy everything in their path from his castle. But humanity responded for the first time in its history as a united front against the threat. The militaries of the world banded together and turned their weapons against Dracula's creatures, and a nuclear strike was even ordered on Dracula's castle. But the power of the red eclipse had made Dracula invincible. Even the power of a nuclear weapon didn't faze him. The only weapon capable of damaging him was the vampire killer. If Julius failed to destroy Dracula, the end of humanity could not be stopped. Julius traveled to Japan and rushed to confront Dracula in a battle that would determine everyone's future, and Alucard worked with the Hakuba clan on a plan to use the eclipse against Dracula. If his powers could be separated from his body, there was a chance of stopping his father. Julius battled Dracula's monstrous ultimate form and struck him with the vampire killer, weakening him severely and eventually striking a killing blow. But the red eclipse's power would surely bring him back immediately if his powers weren't separated from his body and contained elsewhere. As Dracula lay wounded, the Hakuba clan under Alucard's direction began their ritual, and their magic forced Dracula's dark powers back into the eclipse. Without their master's body to contain them, his powers became unstable and caused the wormhole to the Chaos Realm to begin collapsing. With the remainder of their magic, the Hakuba clan was able to seal the last piece of Dracula's magic inside the eclipse, the castle itself. Julius made it out just before the castle disappeared, but lost the vampire killer in the process and suffered a head injury, blacking out in the process. The eclipse vanished after the wormholes collapsed, and Dracula was defeated. With his powers and his castle sealed inside the Chaos Realm, away from him, he reverted back into his human form of Matthias, and died on the ground as a simple mortal. The death toll from the Demon Castle War of 1999 was catastrophic, greater than any other conflict in human history. Matthias's body was taken and burned, leaving no shred of Dracula behind. Many believed this was his ultimate final defeat, and the world rejoiced. But Alucard believed his father would one day return. Although the apocalypse was prevented, it came at a cost. He was determined to prevent such a disaster from happening in the future by involving the governments of the world. He searched for Julius in the aftermath but failed to find him. Alucard revealed himself to the Japanese government as Dracula's son, and the role he'd played over the centuries as protector to humanity. Seeing him as a hero, they kept his identity protected, and he formed a secret international agency with them that would track any supernatural occurrences in various parts of the world. But Alucard's agency wasn't the only one formed in the aftermath of the war. Another one called the Elgos Order dedicated themselves to guarding the sealed material possessions that Dracula left behind, including magical books known as grimoires that held the history of the conflicts with Dracula. Julius Belmont was found unconscious after the final battle, and he awoke in a hospital. The head injury he suffered caused severe memory loss, and he couldn't remember anything about himself, only that his name started with a J. After his recovery, he set out to travel the world in an attempt to rediscover who he was. From the future, Aeon witnessed the end of the Demon Castle War, and he felt satisfied that his actions prevented a tragic future. But Dracula had many enemies in the underworld, and news of his defeat ensured that another would attempt to rise up and take his place. Galamoth, the demon that hated him, dreamed of revenge, and he was sent back into the underworld by Alucard in the 1700s for the final time. Galamoth knew he wasn't powerful enough to stand against Belmont or Dracula's son, and decided that if he couldn't rule, all of reality would be destroyed. He made a deal with a cosmic entity that could manipulate time called the Time Reaper. Galamoth promised him that if he destroyed time itself, he would craft a new universe in its place and let the Time Reaper rule a part of it. The Time Reaper agreed and opened a time rift outside of reality and placed it 10,000 years in the future. The rift would continue expanding and eventually engulf everything. But Aeon and his organization were monitoring the situation, and the rift was immediately noticed. Aeon traveled to the rift and realized the inner portion where the Time Reaper was hiding, and performing his work was sealed by a lock that required 13 soul keys to open. Soul keys could be generated with enough energy created inside the time rift, and the means to generate that energy would be through conflict. As the time rift expanded, it began pulling heroes and villains from history inside of it, and Aeon introduced himself to them one by one as they came in, taking us to the events of Castlevania Judgment.
Castlevania Judgment.
Relatives, friends, and enemies from across time met for the first time, pulled away from their lives at specific points in time, and taken into the Time Rift. In order to generate energy for the Soul Keys, Aeon pitted them against each other. Simon Belmont was pulled from a time just after Castlevania Chronicles and his first victory over Dracula. During his time in the Time Rift, he encountered his ancestor Trevor and tested his own strength against him.
Trevor Belmont?
I see. If you know me, you must be my descendant.
In my time, you are only a legend. I must defeat you to become a true Belmont.
And you must prove yourself worthy of my whip. Show me!
Trevor Belmont came from shortly after his defeat of Dracula during Dracula's curse, while he was investigating the darkness spreading across the land, and he was shocked to meet his wife Sypha, much younger than when he first met her.
Sypha? You're so young.
Who are you? Why do you know my name?
This should make it clear. Care to test the power of a true vampire hunter?
A Belmont? I've been waiting for this.
I confess wondering what this would be like. Show me what a hunter of the church can do.
Sypha during this was a young mage that was employed by the church before Dracula even began attacking humanity, and she discovered that Carmilla and her kind were partially to blame for so many witch burnings across her land.
It's you! Carmilla!
You're that church witch, aren't you? All snug and comfy in your holy robes. Proud of yourself.
What do you mean?
Well, I understand witches face certain trials lately.
That all began because you monsters meddled with the hearts and minds of mankind!
That is the true nature of man. We merely gave it a little nudge. Come, show me your true nature now.
Grant Dynasty kept his human personality, but was still in his monster form that Dracula had imprisoned him in. He sought to challenge Trevor and prove that he would have made a more worthy husband for Sypha.
Trevor? Grant, it's been too long. Sypha and I sorely missed you at our wedding.
Sorry, old friend, but to see her wed to another.
So, that's the way of it. You judge yourself more deserving of her than I. Prove it then!
Maria Renard was just a teenager in between the events of Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night while she was traveling with Richter and perfecting her magical abilities. She encountered Carmilla and was confused as to why a vampire was so much more developed than she was.
Oh my god! Vampire! Why, hello, sweetie pie. You'll make a nice little appetizer. Even the vampires are bigger than mine! What are you babbling about?
No way am I losing to you!
Shanoa was pulled into the time rift during the events of Order of Ecclesia while she was searching for Albus. She met Simon Belmont and revealed to him that the Belmonts disappeared in the future.
That whip. You're from the lost dynasty of hunters?
If you know this whip, then you must know of House Belmont. What do you mean by lost?
Your clan completely vanished. That's why we sought out the power to stop Dracula.
I know nothing of your tale, but your power to vanquish Dracula, that interests me.
Very well. Let's see if my strength is enough to carry the day.
And Carmilla came from a time where she was freed from her mask before the events of Circle of the Moon, and she confronted Cornell, a beast that she considered to be a false child of the night.
So there you are, Blue Crescent Moon.
A vampire. Still hoping I'll join your lot?
Lord Dracula has need of you, but I most certainly do not.
Then state your business.
Impudent cur! You're no true child of the night. Maggots will feast on your hide.
Cornell was pulled in while he was on a quest to discover how to cure himself of the man-wolf curse, and Death had promised that he could lift the curse from him, but he had repeatedly turned down Death's offers to join him in the past.
Death, I found you. What do you know of this curse?
With the dark arts we command, your affliction can be remedied.
Truly? You swear it?
What would I gain with a lie? Now, come with me.
I trust what you say of the curse, but I do not trust you. I will find the way on my own.
And Death was disappointed to learn that Dracula's son Alucard was still fighting against his own father.
Well, well, Lord Alucard, what luck to find you here.
Try as you will, I shall not return to your side.
Oh, I understand. But know that your place as a master's son will earn you no mercy this time.
Then show me what you can do.
Alucard came from a time shortly after creating the Alucard Spear and passing it down to the Lucard clan, and as he always dreaded, he was forced to stand against his own father.
Ah, my long-lost boy. Well met, my son.
This will mark the first time I face you at your full strength.
Yes, you were with that wretched Belmont, and I had not reached my full power.
In truth, I may have been frightened, scared to confront my own father.
You're as soft as ever, boy. You truly hope to challenge me.
This time I will not hesitate. This time the son will surpass the father.
Very well, child. Come.
One of Dracula's own monsters was also pulled in, a golem that became self-aware and questioned its own existence, an existence that Death explained was only useful for Dracula's purposes.
Death God, me can be human?
So, you become self-aware. That would depend on your definition of human.
What make human human? Me want to know.
The capacity to ponder your existence. That is the essence of the human soul.
Me think. So, me human.
You were not made to think. You were made only to serve.
Eric Lucard came from the past during his childhood after having just received the Alucard Spear. He was still a young boy training with it and discovered a force said to be stronger than a Belmont.
Wow, a huge lance! The power to control animals. Could it be Maria Renard? That's me, but who are you? I am Eric Lucard. I can't believe it's really you. Ew, quit staring at me like that, creep. Show me the power said to surpass even that of the Belmont.
And finally, Dracula came from a time in the future during one of his many resurrections. He recognized many of the beings stuck in the time rift with him, but one in particular sent him into a rage. Trevor Belmont, the first man to strike him down and send him into the endless cycle of resurrections.
Trevor Belmont.
Dracula!
The first man to destroy me. At last, sweet vengeance. I will savor this.
As I will savor this chance to repay you for my scars.
Come then. What a suitable finale this will make.
Time wasn't linear inside the rift, a mix of multiple timelines all flowing together all simultaneously. As all the inhabitants battled one another, the energy generated from the battles slowly summoned the soul keys inside the lock, and eventually enough were created to break it completely. But only one soul would be able to enter the Time Reaper's lair. Aeon decided that he was the most experienced in situations involving the flow of time, and successfully sent everyone back into their own times, with no memory of where they had just been. All alone, he faced against the Time Reaper. If he failed, all of reality would be destroyed.
I come from 10,000 years hence.
You will pay for disrupting the flow of time. Your hour is up.
destroyed the Time Reaper and closed the Time Rift. Galamoth's ultimate plan had failed, and Aeon had saved all of humanity from a danger they weren't even aware of. He returned to his organization of Time Watchers and continued monitoring the timeline for any future anomalies. With the Time Rift crisis past, Alucard continued his work monitoring the world for any sign of Dracula's return, and his agency made a startling discovery. While monitoring space, they discovered that an eclipse similar to the one in 1999 was due to appear over Japan again in the year 2035. Dracula was gone, but the possibility that his castle could reappear from within the eclipse existed. There was no need to panic just yet, but Alucard watched with a very close eye. In the year 2017, he felt a dark presence suddenly. The last time he felt this feeling was during the events of Symphony of the Night, where he felt his father's presence, but Dracula wasn't found in the castle. He followed the source of the power and learned that a baby had just been born. In his heart, he knew that the baby boy held his father's soul. For years, Alucard watched the baby grow into a young man named Soma Cruz. In the 1800s, Dracula had attempted to return by using the guise of a young boy named Malice, but there was something different about Soma. Soma grew up normally and he was surrounded by friends, his best friend and romantic interest being a young girl named Mina Hakuba. She was the daughter of the head priest of the Hakuba Shrine, the same location where the ritual to seal Dracula's power was performed. Alucard also visited the Hakuba clan regularly, and the family was quite familiar with him as Genya Arikado and his associate Yoko Belnades, a powerful witch descended from Saifa Belnades. Yoko over the years became very close to Mina, and Mina saw her almost as an older sister figure. Using his connections, Alucard monitored Soma and came to the determination that Dracula was defeated so conclusively that although his soul was inside Soma, it was too weak to awaken and remained dormant. Soma was unaware that he carried Dracula inside and continued living his life normally until the year 2035 when the eclipse returned, leading us to the events of Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. Mina and Soma set out together to watch the eclipse from the steps of the shrine, and as he got closer to the top, Soma felt himself doze off. Castlevania reappeared within the eclipse and was calling out for a new master. Soma awoke in Mina's arms and found himself inside the castle. Alucard had followed them both there and began questioning Soma, believing that Dracula had returned. He questioned why he came to the castle, but Soma was clueless. The last thing he remembered was walking up the steps of the shrine and seeing the eclipse. Alucard revealed that they were inside the eclipse in Dracula's castle, and Mina urged him that Genya could be trusted. At that moment, they were attacked by monsters, and Alucard defended them, but some attacked Mina. Without even trying, Soma absorbed the soul of one of the creatures and could use their abilities. He didn't understand why he carried that ability, and Alucard urged him to find the Master's chamber and discover the truth. In the meantime, Alucard put a protective barrier around Mina and set out to find his own answers. But soon after entering the castle, Soma encountered a creaking skull and added its abilities to his own. While exploring, Soma met a mysterious missionary called Graham Jones. It seemed others had also been pulled into the eclipse. Graham confirmed that they were indeed inside Dracula's castle, and Soma was surprised. He always assumed Dracula was a creature of myth and legend. The world attempted to suppress the true story behind its events, but such a massive scale conflict was too large to hide. Graham also claimed that another piece of the prophecy of 1999 claimed that a new master would inherit Dracula's power in 2035, and gave his farewell. And with every enemy destroyed, Soma was getting stronger, collecting more abilities. In one of the castle's many libraries, Soma ran into Yoko Belnades for the first time. Alucard had sent her to follow Soma and help him if he needed assistance. She explained that Soma and Alucard shared the same dark powers, but stressed that those dark powers could be used for good, depending on the person wielding them. She also warned him about Graham. Yoko believed that Graham would be the man that was destined to inherit Dracula's power. Alucard hadn't told her the truth about Soma yet, a secret that he held close to himself. and after destroying a haunted great armor, Soma met yet another person that made it inside the eclipse, an ex-soldier that called himself Hammer. Hammer was also a descendant from the dynasties, the bloodline of Grant. It seemed that fate was bringing everyone together. Although he was descended from Grant, he didn't share the same warrior spirit. Hammer was ordered by his military unit to go there and investigate the castle's reappearance, but his dreams involved opening up his own shop. Instead of fulfilling his mission, Hammer decided to collect weapons he found around the castle to sell, most of which were left over from the Demon Castle War, and he offered to sell them to Soma for a price. Hammer was a good resource for Soma while he traveled to the Master's chambers, and Soma also discovered a way to travel faster, transporting to different points in the castle. After teleporting, he met a stranger that called himself Jay. It was Julius Belmont, but Julius still couldn't remember who he was. He only knew that he was in some sort of accident in the year 1999, and anytime he heard the name Dracula, he was filled with fear. Once he learned of the castle reappearing, he believed that his memory could return if he investigated it himself. His memory was slowly coming back in small bits and pieces, but he was still lost. After meeting Julius, Soma was challenged by several more monsters on the way to the Master's chamber. Near the castle's top where the clock tower was located, Graham Jones reappeared and greeted Soma. Soma asked him if he was really Dracula, and Graham explained that he was born the same day that Dracula died in 1999. In his mind, that made him the new vessel to carry Dracula, but Graham sensed dark powers inside Soma and questioned what his abilities actually were. When Soma explained, Graham had a strong reaction and panicked. He rushed to the throne room, yelling that only he could wield Dracula's power. Soma told Yoko that Graham was in a rush to get to the throne room. Alucard and Yoko had been trying to capture him, and now that he was in a panic, he would leave himself vulnerable. At the top of the clock tower, Dracula's right-hand man Death appeared and challenged this new stranger. Soma absorbed the soul of Death, and it unlocked the ability to use his weapons. Armed with Death's powers, Soma traveled to the underground areas of the castle and found Yoko and Graham. And as soon as Soma appeared, Graham vanished and Yoko collapsed on the ground. He had stabbed her with a knife and she was bleeding out quickly. He began absorbing the castle's energy in an effort to become its new master, and Yoko underestimated how powerful Graham had become. She fainted from her wounds, but Alucard appeared and promised to take care of her. Soma was frustrated that Alucard wasn't forthcoming with all the information he knew, but he had to get to Graham before it was too late to stop him. Julius's encounter with Soma was causing much of his memories to return faster, and he watched as Soma battled Balor, a giant imprisoned in the depths of the castle from a forgotten time. The monster was filled with pure rage and wished to destroy anyone that crossed its path. After the battle, Julius revealed himself, and suddenly all his memories came flooding back. He remembered his name, his battle with Dracula, his family history, everything. When he encountered Graham earlier, Graham had turned and ran away, and now he understood why. But Julius needed his weapon, the vampire killer. It was left inside the castle in 1999, and was acting as part of the seal to keep the castle's powers weak. Julius knew exactly where he had dropped it and left to retrieve it. If Graham was indeed Dracula, he had to be stopped. More of Dracula's old monsters were resurrecting, including the demonic Legion, but none could stand against Soma's strength. After Legion's defeat, he finally tracked down Graham. The missionary claimed that Dracula's power was already in his grasp, and he was losing his grip on his sanity, becoming even more power-hungry. Soma wanted nothing more than to simply leave the castle with his friends, but Graham was enraged that Soma had control over his monsters, and swore that the boy would pay for his life for theft. Soma successfully destroyed Graham, but all of the concentrated dark energy he had absorbed was free, and naturally, it was attracted to Soma. It entered his body, and everything was made clear. Soma realized that he was holding Dracula's spirit inside, and every second he was struggling to keep himself in control of his own body. He could feel the Dark Lord's presence growing more powerful inside. Alucard revealed that he knew the whole time, but allowed Soma to discover the truth himself, and he hoped that Soma would choose to resist it. Soma barely held on, but Alucard's words of encouragement kept him from losing his humanity. Alucard needed him to embrace the darkness inside in order to destroy the connection between Dracula and his castle. It was linked directly to the powers of chaos hiding inside the Chaos Realm, and only Dracula could enter the Chaos Realm. Soma agreed to destroy the connection to chaos itself and entered the dark realm that Dracula had used to siphon power from for so long. But on the way, he encountered Julius, intent on destroying Dracula again. Soma had no desire to fight him, but the vampire hunter had a responsibility to fulfill. Soma stopped the battle. He had no desire to hurt Julius and was still trying his best to keep Dracula's powers from consuming him. He knew Julius was taking it easy on him, and Julius could sense the struggle inside the boy. The two ended their battle, and Soma made Julius promise him that if he lost control and became Dracula, Julius would end him. Julius agreed and wished Soma luck before he entered the Chaos Realm. Inside the realm, Dracula's true castle was found, the interdimensional entity that housed his power. A realm outside of space and time where the laws of physics were broken, and deep inside he found the core, the power of chaos, the beating heart of Castlevania. Soma doubted that he could resist the darkness much longer, but Mina and the others reached out to him. Soma was his own person, and they all believed that he could hold off Dracula. With a newfound confidence, Soma entered the main chambers and faced off against Chaos, which used Dracula's powers against him. Soma destroyed the connection between Dracula and Castlevania, and the castle disappeared into an eclipse once again, this time a lifeless husk that held no power. He awoke back in Japan with Mina, and he had a new understanding of who he was. The darkness inside of him had lifted, and he realized he was now fully in control of his own life, ending the events of Castlevania, Aria of Sorrow. For the next year, he lived a life of peace and became closer than ever to Mina, and lost the ability to use his powers completely. For now, he was just a normal young man living his life, but one day while he was spending time with Mina, a stranger appeared asking for him, leading us to the year 2036 and the events of Castlevania, Dawn of Sorrow. The stranger summoned a monster just like the ones he had seen inside Dracula's castle, and Soma learned that he once again had the ability to absorb their powers. This could only mean that more trouble was on the horizon. He defended Mina while Alucard protected her with a magical barrier, and the woman disappeared. She was Celia Fortner, a priestess that founded a new religious cult dedicated to worshipping Dracula. They believed that good could not exist without evil, and that the King of Darkness was needed to maintain balance in the world. Their goal was to eliminate Soma, and leave room for a new Dark Lord to emerge. Alucard begged Soma to stay away and let him handle the situation. It was too dangerous for Soma to be involved so closely with the cult. But the cult attacked Mina, and Soma Soma couldn't just stand by. He consulted with Hammer, and Hammer was able to locate their base. Hammer agreed to open up a shop near him for assistance, just as he had before. Soma had kept his visit to their headquarters secret, and began his search for Celia. They were located just beyond an abandoned village, but Soma wasn't the only one hunting them. Yoko and Julius were already in the area, and were shocked to see Soma. The pair knew that the cult was attempting to resurrect the Dark Lord any way they could, and Julius urged Soma to stay away. Julius had no desire to hurt him, but if Dracula took over his body, he wouldn't hesitate to keep his promise. Yoko knew there was no stopping Soma and agreed to teach him how to break certain magical seals found within the base to access more areas. The base was hidden here for a long time, and Celia's cult had been summoning dark creatures from the underworld to destroy any potential visitors exploring, but they now had to contend with the power of Dracula. Yoko decided to set up their own headquarters in the abandoned village near Hammer, who was seeking her romantically, and Yoko told Soma she would help him by fusing the souls of monsters to his weapons, making them stronger. Yoko acted as Julius's contact in the village and provided him with any information that she came across. The cult slayer went deep underground, and Celia was expecting Soma to show himself. She waited patiently and introduced the two candidates she had selected that could potentially become the new Dark Lord. They were growing in power, and whoever killed Soma would be chosen. Dario Bossi and Dmitry Blinov were both born at the exact moment Dracula was struck down, and they both believed they were worthy. When they were strong enough, they would destroy Soma and take his powers. Celia disappeared, and Soma was confronted by more of the cult's creatures. After exploring the outside of their base and inner chambers, Soma found Dmitry in battle with a demon. He destroyed the demon in a ritual to gain power. Dmitry was gifted with the ability to copy magical attacks and use the demon's own magic against it. Imbued with his new powers, he used them against Soma, determined to become the Dark Lord he dreamed of. Soma defeated Dmitry, but he didn't kill him. Regardless, Dmitry suddenly collapsed lifeless, and his soul was absorbed by Soma. He had no idea why it happened, and he was filled with questions. He shouldn't have the ability to gain dominance over human souls, but the darkness inside was growing. And just like the year before, he struggled to resist it. But he had to stop the cult. He knew if he didn't, they would forever be after him, and that would place Mina in harm's way. Soma eventually found Dario, who also challenged Soma to a duel. Dario was powered by fire magic, and he was excited to see how far his own power could grow. Soma stressed that Dmitry's death was unintentional, but Dario didn't care. Dario wanted to kill Dmitry himself to erase any competition, and swore that he would be Soma's end. Dario was still too weak, and Celia stopped the battle immediately. He was forced to pull away from the battle, and Celia taunted Soma. If he wanted to end this, he had to go find her at the top floor of the base. But Alucard found Soma and angrily yelled his name. He specifically told him to stay away from the cult, and he failed to listen. But Alucard could see there was no point in attempting to stop him. He gave Soma a letter from Mina and a talisman meant to keep him safe, and Soma shared the information he had discovered about the cult's activities. The way to the top of the tower was paved with monsters, testing Soma and defending their masters. Soma made his way closer to Celia and found her waiting and taunting him again. She was surprised he'd been taking so long to arrive and claimed that Dario was more powerful than before. He had fused with a fire demon and had powers from hell itself. Alucard and Julius followed Soma, and Celia disappeared, knowing that she couldn't confront all three of them. And suddenly a surge of dark power began flowing in the area. It was Dario's fusion with the fire demon completing. Alucard decided to follow Celia, and Julius went after Dario, and he ordered Soma to stay away, a warning that he would again not follow. Soma found Julius injured from his battle with Dario. He was powerful enough to have given a Belmont a hard time, and without the ability to use magical seals like Soma, Julius couldn't finish off Dario. Dario told Soma to meet him in the throne room to finally settle the score. Julius stayed behind while he recovered as Soma rushed to face Dario. After many more obstacles, Soma finally made it to the throne room and faced him. His new powers were immense, but Soma was able to immediately recognize that those powers weren't his own. They were the demon's powers that Dario was simply repurposing. During his journey, Soma gained the ability to enter the realm behind mirrors, the realm where the demon was hiding, and he was able to destroy the source of Dario's power. Dario was done. He was now a powerless human, nothing more, and he ran away fearing for his own life. But strangely, Celia didn't seem the least bit concerned that her two candidates were both defeated. She left Soma with the ominous message that there was more than one way to create a Dark Lord. She invited Soma to the center of the castle, a location that would change his life forever. After all the warnings from his friends to stay away from the entire situation, Soma went regardless, and discovered something horrifying. Celia planned to recreate the same tragedy that created Dracula, the death of his beloved. Soma felt a rage like he had never experienced before. Mina was murdered right in front of him, and all of Dracula's dark power appeared. Celia had succeeded and awakened the spirit of Dracula within Soma. He struck her down and swore that all of humanity would pay for what happened. If the humans wanted a Dark Lord, they would have him. Outside, Alucard and Julius could feel the same dark presence of Dracula again, and they knew the unthinkable had happened. Soma was dead, and Dracula had returned. Alucard would be forced to release his vampiric powers that he had suppressed for so long. Julius would be forced to slay his former friend, and Yoko also agreed to help. There was no saving Soma now, and just like the time of his ancestor Trevor Belmont, a Belnades, and Dracula's son worked together to stand against him. History, it seemed, was repeating itself. With Dracula's return, death followed, as well as an entire group of Dracula's monsters, and many of the same ones that Soma himself had destroyed. Legendary three warriors traveled through to Dracula's throne room and were forced to combine their might to succeed. When they entered the throne room, they found Soma sitting in Dracula's chair, no longer Soma, but Dracula himself, with a portrait of his human form of Matthias behind them. Dracula hated his previous weak human form and displayed his appearance as Matthias to taunt them. Dracula had had enough. He was defeated when he should have been invincible in 1999, and he was forced to hide quietly inside a human body for years, unable to take it over. He was furious, and now his two hated enemies, the Belmont and Belnada's bloodline, stood before him, next to his traitorous half-breed son. He took great pleasure in destroying Soma and forcing the heroes to injure their friend, but they couldn't show any hesitation. Although Soma's death pained them, Julius, Yoko, and Alucard struck down Dracula, ending the events of Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow, and the entire Perfect Castlevania Timeline. And so, the cycle begins anew. Dracula will inevitably be resurrected, and the bloodline of Leon Belmont will be there to defend humanity. Is there any possibility of Soma being resurrected without his connection to Dracula? Perhaps one day that question could be answered. For now, it is a tragic ending indeed. But there is a lesson to be learned. History is destined to repeat itself. Darkness will always be present, but heroes will always rise up to meet it.
this day on, the Belmont clan will hunt the night!
Since you made it to the end of this video, I assume you enjoyed it, so why don't you go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss any new content. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, links in the description below, and if you'd like to support the channel, you can join my Patreon or become a channel member. This is Fabian, I love you guys, and I'll see you next time.